There you go.
Philip Mitchell got to be tired at this point. He's got to be exhausted because it seems like every other week he's trending. So it was like, what, a month or so ago when he went viral for making those statements about black kids and police brutality. And then, of course, over the last couple of weeks, Tiffany Montgomery has had a lot to say about him and the Perrys and all this kind of stuff. And now you got the Hebrew Israelites showing up at 28:19.
That's why Jesus said, go to all nations. Right. Hey, I got a question for you, sis. I got a question, sis. Look, they on indoctrinated, y'all. Hey, sis, I got a question. What does Matthew 28:19 mean? There you go.
Now, if you've been following me on TikTok or watching some of my YouTube videos, I already know I've got some critique for some of the things I've heard from Philip Mitchell and some of the things that I've seen from his followers that concern me. None of it like an essential like Christian doctrine. So like I would not categorize that church or him as heretical. But I do find it a little concerning like how people are responding to 28:19. Like some of it is kind of personality cultish, but that's another whole conversation. For all of the things that I could criticize Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell for, I do think he's making a lot of positive impact in the city of Atlanta. But I mean, watching those Hebrew Israelites just verbally attack and insult these people coming out of church, especially like women and young children, it's pretty hard to watch. But that's also very on brand for Hebrew Israelites. Anyway, I think this would be a great teaching opportunity. Like, I'm really hoping that he addresses this on Sunday, which typically when things get really intense on social media, you know, every once in a while he'll address it. But I think it would be a good idea for him to really teach his church what the beliefs of the Hebrew Israelites are and compare and contrast it to Orthodox Christian biblical teachings so that people can, you know, be confident that the gospel is true, that we're on the right side of the Bible here. And I don't know, actually engage some of these people, which I can imagine that it's super intimidating when you are surrounded by all these people, especially if you didn't know this was about to happen. They've got cameras in your face and they're on these speaker phones and they're asking you these questions that you may or may not have the answer to. And then they're making all these personal attacks and insults. Like that's crazy. But this is also a form of Christian persecution. And unfortunately, but probably also fortunately, this is an opportunity for the church to really step up and be like, okay, what are these people talking about? How should we engage them? How should we respond to them? And actually use it as an opportunity to let our light shine, or let 28:19's light shine. I think Philip Mitchell's strengths as far as preaching is the emphasis on sanctification, living holy, living righteous, you know, being serious about your faith. But I'm not sure if there's been enough emphasis on like Bible interpretation and just the essentials of the faith. It just seems like a lot of times he'll preach truth, but he kind of darts right past the essentials. Like he'll talk about the Trinity, but he goes by it so fast, or he'll talk about something else, or, you know, he'll be heavy on the background and historical context. And I think that matters. But with all the things going on in culture and all the false prophets and all the self-proclaimed apostles and now the Hebrew Israelites and these other things, like it's so important for Christians to really be equipped in knowing our Bibles and knowing how to articulate the Christian faith. Because from afar, and again, this is just me looking from afar, I think a lot of the people there are more confident in who he is as a pastor than they are in just really being able to understand like what it means to be a Christian or what the Bible is really saying about God. And like, yeah, I think there's just, again, so much emphasis on fasting and prayer and these emotional experiences and miracles, signs and wonders, when a lot of the real battle is between these different ideas and views and opinions on the scripture and like, what is truth, what is reality, what's going to happen in the afterlife, and who is God. Who's God? Because Hebrew Israelites typically deny the triune God, because most of the cults deny God's triune nature, right? So they'll get all loud and yell and scream about women wearing pants and all these other things that really it's like they're not even sins, but then they'll be like in favor of polygamy. So okay, this woman is wrong for wearing fitted jeans, but y'all think it's okay to have a whole group of women to one man. It's crazy. It's like, now tell me that ain't the devil. But that's actually what draws some people to cult groups like the Hebrew Israelites. And ironically enough, I think part of the reason why people like Philip Mitchell so much is because of how he presents, like a really strong, kind of aggressive preaching type of figure, kind of yeah, maybe aggressive is the word. It's like aggressive isn't really the word I'm looking for, but still kind of like this dominant alpha male figure. Like I think Philip Mitchell is kind of almost an answer to maybe like some of the Michael Todds of the world, where they're kind of tired of a Christianity that really just looks kind of goofy and silly and just outrageous, and they want something that's I think people want something to be proud of, and they want to be able to say, that's my pastor, this is my church, this is my group, this is my community, which isn't always wrong. But yeah, I think that's part of the draw to Hebrew Israelism. It's got a strong, it looks like something that people should be proud to be a part of. And I think that's what 2819 has, that same appeal of, this looks like a really, like, that's the type of man I want to follow. And we got to be careful with that. Philip Mitchell says all the time to not idolize him. But I think because of his style of preaching, which again, there's a lot of truth in it, but when a lot of it is so centered on his personal experiences with God, his prayer life, his fasting, not to say that he doesn't include some of his own personal failures too, because he does, and I think it's good for pastors to talk about that kind of stuff. But when it becomes a constant, maybe not constant, but if he talks about his own personal life in a way where it's like, I'm anointed, and because I'm anointed, God has blessed me with this huge ministry that has, now started to impact people from all different parts of the globe. Like, obviously this means that God has favored me. And I just think that's kind of a dangerous type of rhetoric. Whether he's intending for it to come across that way or not, I don't want to judge his heart. And again, I've done a lot of videos kind of critiquing from afar, and I, believe it or not, like I don't hate him. I don't want to see him or the church fail. But child, lost my train of thought. But anyway, I said all that to say, I want 2819 to not just have a good impact, but like a long lasting impact, so that people aren't just following after a trend or a fad or whatever. That when all the hype wears off and there's a new shiny church in town, that people are still, solid Christians, solid believers. And it's not like a superficial faith, but it is a faith that can be tested, even if you've got, dozens of angry Hebrew Israelites yelling at you just for doing what Christians should do, which is to go to church, fellowship with other Christians, and, worship God. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the Philip Anthony Mitchell 2819 Hebrew Israelite situation that's going on. Yeah, this is a great opportunity to teach your people. And even if you're not at 2819, this is still a great opportunity to teach your churches about this growing movement called the Hebrew Israelites, because apparently they still outside. I hadn't really been seeing a whole bunch of stuff from them online in recent years because I kind of checked out of that conversation, but obviously they are here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. So Christians have to be prepared to deal with these types of groups, because they out here and we have the truth, so we really don't have anything to be afraid of, or our faith can be defended. And yeah, the Bible's pretty clear. It speaks for itself on who God is. So we got to know some of these details. It's got to be more than just prayer and fasting. Like, we need to know what Christianity is. All right, that's it. That's all.
Hey, what did Matthew 28:19 mean? Do you know? Do you know, my sister? Do you know, brother? Do you know what does Matthew 28:19 mean? My brother, do you know what Matthew 28:19 means? Do you know? They don't know. They don't know, y'all. They don't want to know.